So we're going to talk about making it. Does everybody understand the word pitch? So pitch is just another word for presentation, but probably up to this point in life, how you've been taught to do presentations and how you want to do it for these kind of settings are a bit different, right? This is not a technical presentation. You don't get credit for more words. These judges are normal people who fall in love with ideas and hate ideas, and they like, pretty slides to get their attention, and all those kind of things, right? So this is not a term paper. It's a presentation. And so when you watch TV shows, would you watch a TV show that the actor has no costume, there's no background, it's just the facts, and he just gets up there and recites lines for an hour? Would you watch that TV show? No. Even if you try to, you will be asleep in about 7 minutes and you'll miss it. So, they do all those things because it's more interesting. We're humans. We're very visual. And so if your slides are all black type on white paper with nothing else, the judges will sleep through your presentation and you will not score well. It may or may not be fair. People argue with me in a lot of different ways. I go to 30 or 40 of these a year and help run 4 or 5 different ones. It may not be fair that the smartest team doesn't win a pitch contest, but it's how the real world works. Do the smartest TV shows sell the most commercials? No, they do not. Right? The most intelligent ones do not. So, presentation is a part of life. So as you leave college and go to work for companies, and he's making a presentation and you're making a presentation for the same project maybe, or however it works in your line of business, the one who makes the best presentation gets the project, not necessarily the one who is always the expert in that area. Because it doesn't matter how smart you are if they don't believe it, right? So part of making a presentation is being very comfortable, putting passion into it. So one thing we're going to tell you, which you hate to hear, and so for EagleWorks, when you're ready for your EagleWorks presentation, you should have practiced at least 20 times, right? It's 7 minutes. All right, it's way harder to get to 7 minutes than it is to do a 20-minute pitch. I can tell you, I train and do this all over the Southeast. It's easy to do a 15 or 20-minute presentation. Take that same idea and cut it to 7 minutes. It's hard. And if you move on to the student competition at the Launch Tennessee level, what is it now, Andrea? 3 minutes is your video?
Yep.
That you will be judged on, and then they get down to a group of finalists that have 3 minutes to present in a room of 500 people to win. One team won $60,000 last year or something.
And by the way, Tennessee Tech is the most medaled university from the Launch Tennessee.
We took a hit last year,
We
but
did.
up until that time, we were killing them on average.
But we won it 3 times. So.
Yeah, so last year was a bit disappointing. So everybody know how to use PowerPoint, right? You can use Google Slides. You can use, what's the Mac version of Presenter? Not a fan of Prezi. I'll just tell you, I love using it, but it does not translate well to PowerPoint. It has some issues. Because then you'll be calling us after you've turned in your stuff and we can't change it and go, my fonts don't match and all that stuff. Because you have to turn it in a PowerPoint format, right, Andrea?
We're changing that. We're giving them an HDMI. I'm glad you mentioned that. We're giving you all an HDMI connection for this year.
Okay.
We're going to try that out. So
We're going to try that.
try to do PowerPoint, but we're not going to tell you to do that.
We are suggesting that regardless of what you use, have a backup thumb drive
Yes.
with a PowerPoint presentation on it, just in case there's some kind of connection issue.
So Murphy's Law, everybody knows Murphy, right? What can go wrong will. Murphy lives in AV presentations and equipment, right? And the bigger the organization you're dealing with, like a university, he has lots of cousins even lives there. And so, it just seems like one of the things you're going to ask, let me go ahead and tell you some stuff we run into all the time. Do not try to play a video in a contest like this. It never works. 2 years ago, it played literally that's 3 years ago, I guess. So in the preliminary rounds, their video played 2 minutes before they went into the room to do it, and then it wouldn't play while the judges were there. And so don't try video. Use screenshots, use whatever, but video never seems to work when you do it too. And I've found that to be, again, in all this I do, probably 75% of videos don't play when you really need it to. And so I would not suggest videos. I don't know, do we ban them all together? But
We're not banning them this year, but don't use videos.
Yeah, just don't
It just
do it.
never
Just
works.
don't.
right.
Yeah, and the turning in on time. So one of our biggest disappointments is everybody who helps run this is the team who should have won 2 years ago, probably should have won the whole thing, got docked 20% on their score because they didn't turn in their stuff in time. And so that's a set rule. There's no getting around it. If it's not there at
1:59.
11:59 on March 25th.
then you're getting docked 20%. So that dropped them. Their score was tied for first place, and they wound up in fourth after being docked 20%. So they didn't win any money, and so they went from winning $10,000 to zero.
And we do that for fairness. We don't do that to be mean.
And it was disappointing for us. I mean, because they were well prepared and all those things. But I mean, that's also how the real world works. You know, if you're making a presentation to Nike tomorrow and you don't show up at your appointment at 11 o'clock, Nike's not going to call back and go, "Oh, we can do it tomorrow." No, they're already on a plane back to wherever. You know, they're never calling you back again. So that's how the real world works. And so if you want to lose business, miss your appointments and those kind of things. And it's not doing it to be mean, but that's really how it works. So what I do is run through a series here. So use pictures, use color. We really like background pictures because, again, this is a visual presentation. So your first slide generally is just introduce yourself and kind of your pitch. So you may go ahead and do the whole team here, or a lot of people will do that as the last slide. So we don't care, either one will work, but have a picture of each of you. Again, that's interesting, right? So as we run through this is the same way we teach 11-year-olds, by the way, or 60-year-olds. This is the same presentation on how to build. And we find out actually 13-year-olds do consistently the best slide presentations in all the work we do. At 13, 14, man, they do some cool stuff. So that's kind of what your first slide should look at. Oh, this works better if you turn it on. So here's what we see. Everybody says, I'm going to do a 7-minute pitch. I'll have 37 slides. No. If you're doing a 7-minute pitch, you probably need 7 to 8 slides. So there's a saying out there, if any of you know who Guy Kawasaki is, he's kind of the master of presentations. He's one of the original 12 at Apple, I guess. And so, you know, basically he talks a lot about these kind of things. So his thing is 10 slides, 20 minutes, 30-point top. So I changed that a little bit for EagleWorks. That probably about 8 slides. I mean, you might get 9 or 10 in, but you don't need 40, right? You got 7 minutes, right? We don't want to get dizzy, you know, as you click through slides. So basically a slide per idea or per explanation, sort of. You got 7 minutes and nothing should be smaller than 30-point top. Oh my God, I sit through this every day. Is that they put up a presentation, I'm about to turn 58 years old. Once I get to about right here, if you have all this stuff in 12 points, I don't have a clue what's up there, right? And there's 400 words on there. So here's the number one thing to a presentation. Let's assume the judges can read. I don't even know all the judges this year, but I'll bet you my house they can all read. I'll just make that bet right now. So don't read slides to them. That is the worst thing in the world. 8 slides, 7 minutes, 30-point time. Oh my God, don't turn your back on the audience, you know, because I will probably start throwing things at you from wherever I'm sitting. If you turn your back to the audience, that's rude. So know your slideshow. That's why we tell you to practice. You know what slides are really for in a good presentation? Is to keep you where you should be at in your talk, right? So really, they're to guide you through your talk. You want to tell a story here. You don't want me reading slides. You want to give me visual clues that you explain with your voice, right? That's how people fall in love with your idea, because that's literally what you're trying to do at EagleWorks, is get them to fall in love with the problem you're solving, your team, and what you think is your solution. If they fall in love with those three things, you're taking some money home. Unless we've had one team that did things like we talked about that broke the laws of physics. So
That happened.
so don't do that. But so we always have one technical judge that will actually drag you out on that one. Less words, the better. Don't do this. You know, how disgusting is that? Right? You know, straight out of the 90s right there, baby. And I don't know how many words are on there. I guess I should know that. I should count them. But about 10 times more than there should be. So typically, you know, you don't even have to use full sentences in a presentation, right? It's more bullet points. But don't do that. So our U.S. Department of Defense paid PA Consulting Group $108,000 to develop that slide right there during the Gulf War. Don't do that. Does anybody have a clue what that says? You know, so I can just see that being presented to a room full of soldiers. You know, it looks like something my neighbor's cat dropped off on the porch. So don't do those. Face the audience once again. Don't read the slides. Tell me a story. You may ever heard the song when you're little, you know, tell me a story. Tell me a story. Tell me a story so I can go to bed. Tell us a story. Don't get technical, because most of the judges won't have any idea of what chloroformaldehyde is, right? So, you know, don't get too technical. Engineers, we struggle with that, right? We want to tell you in deep detail all the technical specifications. And in the prelims, you'll have to answer a lot more of that. In the finals, if you make it to the finals, they're probably not going to ask these deep, dark technical questions, right? They're really concerned about, is this really a problem? Does the world really need it? That's how the judges are trained, right? Every once in a while, we have one who's a real geeky engineer that'll get into some technical details, but we haven't the last couple of years really had one of those, have we? So your second slide normally should be kind of the problem, right? Why am I doing this? Anybody ever read Simon Sinek or watched any of his videos? You know that name? Google that when you have time. Simon Sinek speaks a lot on public speaking, but he talks about leadership. And his thing is he draws a bullseye and says, great companies, the Googles and the Apples and the highly profitable companies, they do this thing of typical in a company, 20% of the people will understand what they do. 80% will understand what you do. About 40% will understand how they do it, and about 20% understand the why. So he wrote a book called Understanding the Why. And if everybody understands the why, that's very motivational to humans. You know, we're not just making needles, we're making an apparatus that saves lives, right? And as your generation and the generation a little older than you, work has to have more meaning than it used to. A job is not just a job, and that's a good thing. I'll tell you as one who employ people. A lot of people make it a bad thing, that they think you're entitled, and you're really just curious, and you're way more educated than the workforce has ever been. So you should be curious, and you want to understand the why, right? I want employees who want to understand the why. So tell the problem, make it a story that the audience can feel, they can understand, right? Because if you see them leaning forward, that means they recognize that problem. They know people who have that disease, or they know companies who have that problem, or whatever it may be, or how it could save lives. And so you want to engage them on that's why we're doing this. And so the judges, you know, we now have done this enough, we can see your score going up when we see the judges kind of doing that. Wow, this is really cool. You know, I get it, right? And so even if it's pretty technical, you gotta get in basic words. We tell everybody, present like it's the judges are all fourth graders. Because believe it or not, the amount of money people make when you're talking to venture capitalists, the amount of money they make and intelligence, the amount of money they have and intelligence aren't that closely related. So a lot of them inherited those hundreds of millions from their parents. So, so and they're a surfer, right? So you never know, but don't make it too technical once again, but tell them in a way that it's a story they fall in love with, right? And I'll show you some of that in a minute. Then usually your next slide should kind of be, now you understand the problem. So this is your ta-da moment. This is our solution, right? This is what we're going to do to solve that problem for that person or group or whatever we're doing, right? So kind of in a big picture kind of thing, right? And this is the focus, the attention on your key concepts. So use pictures, maybe even diagrams, right? If all you have is drawings of what you're going to build, then put a picture of the drawing, right? But something that can show what you're doing. If you're making a knee brace, then have a picture of the knee brace on somebody, right? That kind of thing. Don't necessarily give the technical drawings that it's made out of tungsten and da-da-da-da-da. Show a picture of it on a football player with a knee messed up, whatever. So, icons can work, different illustrations. Then the next slide may be a little more detail in the solution, a little bit more of the how it works, what it does, where that may be. But again, see that slide right there? If you have a slide with more words on it than that, you're losing the audience. That's what happens. What do? They read. When they're reading, what is happening? They're not listening to you. And so that's where things go awry, right? When they start reading slides, I go to a lot of things where they pass out all the handouts. It's a copy of the slide presentation before they do it. Don't even do the presentation. If you're going to give me a printout of all the slides, you could have just emailed me that and I could have been at lunch with my buddies, right? So, that I hate it when I go, but I go to so many things because they were taught to do that. Like the webinar I did today, then they email a copy of all the slides after the webinar's over. That's perfect. But even if you're going to hand out a copy, that's fine. This is not for e-works. But if you're going to hand out a copy, but don't give it to them until you're finished, all right? Because that's for reference later. You want them listening to you. Anybody seen the video of the kids going, listen to me? That's what you want the audience to do here. You want them listening to you, hanging on your every word if you're really good at it. So again, use colors, use background pictures. Always remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. So sometimes a perfect slide is nothing but a picture that you explain what's going on in that picture. That is actually a great slide. But we're just all trained that if we beat it to death with words, they have to understand it better. And that's not really true in a presentation, right? Big picture, use a big image. So if you've got a big number or something that's really impressive, you can use some charts, some very simple charts. Again, very simple. I'll laugh at billboards that I drive by that it takes 5 minutes to read the billboard. Are you just trying to kill me? You're trying to get me to read a billboard. A billboard, in my opinion, should have maybe 4 words on it and a logo so that I can read it while I'm doing 10 miles over the speed limit going past it. So you can use a little bit of that stuff. Don't get carried away, right? So I think I show a table here. Probably 3 columns and 3 rows is about the most you want to do in a table because, again, they're going to start going through that thing. It's just natural. Humans will do that. They'll start reading that table and try to calculate in their head and all kinds of things, and they're not listening to you. But you can use it to make a point. If you're not making a point with that table, then don't put one in there at all. Does that make sense? If you have that wow, big number or big something, that's a perfect slide for that. Make the number really big. Because you're saying this is really important. And don't put anything else in that slide. So, we can talk about that 89,526,000 people need umbrellas each year, whatever it is, right? So, but that big number catches their attention. All right, now, if you don't have a big number, probably don't put 7 up there, right? And make it really big. But it needs to be something that really stands out that you really want to bring a lot of focus to, but that's a very powerful part of the story, right? Yeah, so if you're gonna have 3 customers, probably don't use that as the big number. If you have something, so we try to cover a wide gamut of things here, what I'll talk about. So if you have something that's kind of a process, you might do like explaining the 3 steps of the process, that whatever your solution is a process. So again, not a lot of words, but kind of guide them through that, right? With some pictures, maybe. Or just something like that is fine. If you're doing some kind of, it's going to have an app attached to it, either a mobile app or a web app or whatever you're doing, then use these little placeholders, the kind of, oh gosh, what are the most popular ones? You can always use Lucidchart. That's, if you use Chrome at all, you can get free access to Lucidchart to pull these images. And then you just insert a screenshot of whatever you think your app would look like inside that. And I'm telling you, the audience thinks you have actually built an app when you do that. They did. 80% of them will think you've actually built this thing and it's finished. If you make that look right. And I'll show you some examples of some guys that were masters at it. And so again, mobile, there's an iPad. So you can get up, this stuff's free everywhere. You can steal these wireframe images.
This presentation is also on the website,
Yes.
so all of these are available through that. You can copy and paste.
Then usually the last slide is going to be your team, or you can do it first, whichever you want to do. Again, we haven't talked about tonight. Usually you'll say something about the team and what they do. This is our lead technical. He's a chemical engineer. She's our business person, CEO, or whatever, if you want to give them a title. Titles don't matter so much at this point, even though that's a big thing in the world of Silicon Valley. And of course, you always say thanks and ask the judges if there are any questions. Now, one thing that is not in this is somewhere, doesn't really matter where you put it, but you're going to need to put something that speaks to the market size, right? There's 1 billion people, there's 10,000 businesses, there's whatever, because that's something you're being graded on. So you need to understand that it's a market size, the size of the problem, and I don't have the rubric where I can see one. But you need to have a little bit about, you got to have some financial stuff that we think we can sell 100,000 units or something like that. So you got to have a slide a little bit that touches the market just a little. It's okay if you want to put a slide again. You may have 9 or 10 slides, but just understand, practice so that you don't get stuck on slides. We've seen people waste 2 of the 7 minutes on one slide. Don't do that, right? We've seen them waste more than that. And then they struggle getting finished. But if you practice enough, this will get really easy. I'm just telling you, you don't believe that. But after about 10 times, you'll get all your timing figured out, and it really starts to smooth out. And I'm not a fan of using notes. I would not suggest that. If you've ever had a public speaking class in high school, they told you to have notes. Nobody uses notes for that stuff anymore. There's teleprompters, there's PowerPoint, there's laptops, there's a billion ways that you don't look at note cards. And in a 7-minute presentation, if you can't do it without notes, what does that say to me as a judge? You don't know your material. If you can't use that as your notes and make a 7-minute pitch, you don't know the stuff. So I'm telling you that we've seen really at the high school level, kids come in with notes, and even though it was totally unfair for high school kids to get punished at that level for that, because that's what they were told to do by some of their teachers, The kids who didn't did much better. So let me put it that way. Think again, and you can move these around just because our order doesn't have to be perfect. But again, structure it where it makes sense, right? Here's the problem, here's the solution, here's how many people have the problem, here's how much I'll sell it for. Because you could have a slide that maybe says, I'm going to sell it for $550. It cost me $200 to make it. Blah, 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 blah. So you need to have at least one screen of financial stuff. So to kind of, slide one is kind of the vision and the value proposition when we talk about value proposition. 2 is usually the problem. 3 and 4 are usually telling a little detail about the solution. 5 and 6 are kind of the market and financials. So if you have to add a couple extra slides to show your solution, that's fine. Like I say, don't panic if you wind up with 11, but just understand those 3 or 4 crammed in there are not as important. Those are not the big points you want to hit. So move those pretty quick. Don't spend a minute talking about a screenshot, right? There's what our interface looks like. Click next slide, that kind of thing. And then the team, and then thank you and questions. Otherwise, if you did have something really good, screenshots, you're building an app, add those things in there. If you were to have had some kind of partnership, if somebody did have something that, some company or some organization is already interested in what you're doing, that's really impressive to the judges. We have that occasionally. That by the time they got to this point, somebody was interested. And then here's some of the stuff. So different places you can get fonts. Like I say, Lucidchart's a great place to steal wireframes and all kinds of designs and icons and stuff that I think it's all free. I guess there is a paid version. I don't know anybody that's ever bought the paid version. And again, just all kinds of things like that you can steal. I haven't used Slides Carnival in a year or so I assume it's still around. If you don't know how to use Google Docs, I think most of you do. So I'm going to show you some presentations that have been winners over the last 3 or 4 years, right? So was this last year?
2 years ago.
2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago. Golly. So I really like theirs because they really took my this talk to heart, and they had a good idea and a good product and a good team, but they also killed with their opening couple of slides. So they really got the judges' attention, even though they probably weren't as far along in developing their idea as some of the teams. But you could see the judges were just eating out of their hand. Mm-hmm. And so that really went well for them. So their idea, to kind of tell you, is a glove that helps with people with arthritis, right? It helps force the fingers open. All the other things on the market are compression gloves, and this glove helps open the fingers back up. And that turns out that's a pretty big issue. They're still working on this, by the way. So there's their team slide, kind of who did what, which was kind of funny because both the engineers were females and the nurse was a male, so everybody always assumed that one of the females was the nurse. I had a blast watching people stick their foot in their mouth every time they met the team. So that was fun, wasn't it? It was just, you can see it coming. It's like, this poor person's going to embarrass themselves because they're assuming that she is the nurse. So anyway, so their story started with, what do you see when you see that picture? Does it make you hungry? Do you think of your mom canning and making homemade salsa? Maybe, maybe not. 47 million Americans have trouble chopping those vegetables because of arthritis or opening the jaw. Boom. They just went to the lead. The judges were like, man, my aunt's got arthritis, my mom's got arthritis. I totally understand what you just said. There was nothing about using big disease names or, you know, the formulas of the polymer that we made the glove out of, any of that stuff. So we saw and probably win it with that. I would say a minute and a half in, they had won. And the judges told us that. I mean, the judges are real honest about it. So then they go to, you know, the current problem with arthritis is other treatments are expensive. You know, physical therapy requires tons of visits, lots of money. The compression gloves are ineffective. You talk about what else is out there, competition sometimes. And then the whole opioid crisis. People totally understood that. The people are taking too much pain medicine. It's contributing to the opioid crisis. So again, those two slides, it was basically over. All the argument was for second and third place after that. So then they had gone on a trip where they had the original idea. So see how few words are on a slide? You know, there's kind of what they thought their money looked like. You know, a little bit of projection in the future. They really put a lot of work into this. And kind of where they were at that point. They did a thing about how arthritis is increasing, it's not going down. As we're an aging population that actually went to 78 million by 2040. Things like that are great. So it really showed that they understood the problem and how many people had this problem. And that's what they're looking for. You don't have time to have fully vetted solutions, right? You just don't. But in this competition, to show that you really understand the problem and how many people have the problem, the judges are going to lap that up. So these were probably our most famous presenters. These five guys, I could hand them your presentation, and at 10 o'clock tonight, they could make the best presentation of your stuff that's ever been made. You know, they were about half nuts and very artistic, and two programmers and two engineers and a business major.
For those of you that were here 2 weeks ago for the question and answer session, the one with the long hair, Chris Syke, he's getting lunch.
Yeah, so he's one of those guys. So I'll show you their press because it was visually stunning, right? And there's he's actually a chemical engineer, but he loved doing design. So he's a great designer and had a real eye for it. So he, believe it or not, he got credit for all this. But that was the picture of their team, 6.1 billion users. So just see how this is so appealing as you click through it. So this is where they talked about their idea. And this was really kind of a chef prepared food idea at the time. It evolved a lot. But their original idea was kind of like the Uber Eats kind of thing, but based on international meals. And so they were using, I don't remember, they told me, I think that was a shot from one of the fresh delivery services. And then they talked about what their difference was. And their real thing was authentic international and get the culture of where the food came from and all that kind of thing. They hired really international chefs who were from that area so that they got very authentic food. So that's probably the one slide they had with almost too many words on it. And then their solution was GigaMunch. To see this, they had built nothing. Well, they actually had built some stuff, but it wasn't ready to show. But they used those same wireframes, and the audience swore they had a working app, which they did not. I mean, they even added some of that. So things like that. So then this is explaining their revenue model. All right, how does it make money? How does this idea make money? That slide. So part of this, now this is not the slide they did, the presentation they did in 2016. This is one they added to a lot later when they were actually presenting to investors. So there's some of these that are added in here. So I pulled out most of the stuff that was aimed at just investors. But an impact slide, that was pretty good. Thanks a GigaMunch. Do you have any questions? Right. And so then the last one, I think this team was second place 3-4 years ago. But they did a very good job. I don't know that their visuals are as cool as GigaMunch. Well, I know they're not because they were graphics. There was a graphic designer in the crowd. But they did a good job on keeping it simple and explaining the problem and the concept. And so this was a very good presentation that again, what this does is it replaces all this exchange of business cards at like conventions and large gatherings of people. And so, I'm one of them. I get back from one of them. I got all these business cards. It's now been 5 or 6 days since I met them all. And so I either, when I'm being diligent, then I sit down and enter all that into my Google Contacts, or I don't. And then a year later, I'm looking through these cards going, where in the heck did I meet that lady? That kind of thing. So their app was to replace that when you meet, that you could kind of use the near field capabilities of cell phones, kind of bump phones, and you can transfer your business card to people that way. So they had a lot of ideas here, but their opening talk was, is this you, right? When you get back from a convention or a large meeting or whatever. And so that's kind of how they opened it up. And then they talked about 10 million business cards are printed in the US every year, which they would later show within a week, 88% of them are thrown away. Interesting numbers, right? So if you can Google stuff about your idea and find these kind of numbers, that is fantastic. So this is then they did the same thing. That's a mock-up. They had a little bit of their app working, I think, when they presented. But they did some mock-ups of what it would look like. Then they talked about how it would make money, advertising, enterprise accounts, large company accounts, paying $2 a month for their employees to have this. And then they talked about some of the benefits of how it would sync, kind of the how it worked kind of thing, just for a minute. And then they did the team. And I liked how they did their team using what they thought their app was going to look like, was how they introduced their team. That was pretty cool. So be inventive on that kind of stuff.
And I think, like Jess said too, this may not be the most prettiest presentation, but EagleWorks is not about your presentation, how pretty it is, it's how well you can communicate to the
You
judges.
can communicate to the judges, right? So they love the information in this. Where they won is not on the visual. I think they were second place, but not so much the visual, but it had all the information they were looking for. So when you looked at them, who had the highest score across all categories, I don't know that they had a 5 anywhere, but they were like all 4s. And so they did well in the information. And so the judges really rewarded them for that this was a very complete presentation. I remember the judge saying that, one of the judges saying that. And so then they talked about what they're going to do. They did have an email set up and those kind of things. So that's kind of the basis of what you should do, is make it engaging. Make it to where you or whoever's presenting. We haven't got into the questions of, typically, can more than one person present? Does anybody waiting to ask that, or we already talked about that?
We've talked about that, but I mean, you can repeat it.
We don't care. We're not going to say you can't. We'll tell you that is fraught with danger when you start switching speakers. The best presentations are usually one person does the whole thing. I wouldn't suggest more than 2. 2 can go pretty well. Our experience has been, once you get more than 2, think about it. You really want 3 people telling you a story, or you want one voice from beginning to end. So it gets a little distracting, I think, with more than 2. We've had some do the back forth, the tit-tat kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which worked okay for a couple of them.
It honestly, it just depends. If it's something that you're trying to figure out what to do, it's best to try and practice a couple times in front of other people. And that's what the pitch practices will be doing, will be really helpful with that, to see if you want to stick with one person or bounce back and forth between 2. It'll give you an idea before you're up on stage.
Have any of you done much public speaking or presentations like this before? How many of you get sweaty palms and your pulse rate goes to 160 and all that kind of stuff? Think you're going to pass out? We have not had anybody die yet. We haven't had any blood flow that we're aware of. So, you know, it's kind of they can shoot you, but they can't eat you. Okay? So one of the problems we did see with the team, they tried to do 4 presenters. And I don't know, quite a couple years ago when all 4 of them were doing it, and the one kid absolutely froze.
There was
Is that
one
3 years
last
ago?
year doing that, actually.
Pros.
He absolutely went totally, so that was a good story on having too many people, that it was going really well. And then they tossed the ball to him and it was no. You know, and so again, they had not practiced it. So if you're gonna do more than one, practice 30. Right? Set your timing on passing back and forth and stuff. So what will happen is, you know, going on the assumption that we're still doing this publicly, the university is still having in-person classes. If we go on that assumption, you'll have a confidence monitor in front of you where you can see the slides so that you're not doing this. All right? So you can see your slides as you click through them. And so that helps tremendously. I think I do tons of these. I've won a couple of pitch contests. I won one in Alabama in front of 880 people. I was one of 4 teams presenting. I was not the best company, and I probably was not the best presentation, but PowerPoint crashed about halfway through my pitch, and I knew it so well that I just kept going, turn the projector off, and I just kept going. So I think I won it totally on simple points, right? But I knew my stuff well enough that it never really slowed me down other than the 10 seconds of telling him just turn it off. What happened was when the guy was copying the slides, he had clicked on the automatic advance, and it just went wow. He was changing slides like every 2 seconds about halfway through. I'm like, just turn it off, and I kept going. So, you know, that kind of thing, be prepared for that, and don't worry if you say a word wrong or you stutter or you stumble a little. Remember, you know more than they do about what you're talking about, so act like it. Fake it till you make it sometimes in these kind of things. If you get nervous, just get up there and do what you know. You know, what's the thing? You be you, right? And so get up there and do your thing. That nobody's gonna die, right? I promise you, we won't let you stop breathing for more than 20 or 30 seconds. There's trained CPR people.
Yeah, we got nurses on staff.
Yeah, we have nurses there. So, other questions?
Do we need to have a reference slide?
Nope.
No.
They don't care. Again, that's way different from what you do in an academic setting, right? They're not going to go check your references or any of that. We have had a couple teams that stretch the truth. So let's talk about Q&A, right? So you win it with the presentation and you lose it in Q&A is the typical mantra of doing these kind of pitches, right? And so you got to back up your presentation with Q&A, and that's where you can give details, right? If one of the judges is really interested, so they have 5 minutes to ask questions, and so you want them to ask questions. What you don't want is they don't ask any questions. You are dead. I'll tell you, that's a bad indicator. If they don't ask questions, it means they're not interested at all. So you want them to be peppering questions at you. That means they kind of like it, believe it or not. That seems like reverse psychology. So either you can convey more information in 7 minutes than anybody ever born to date, or they don't like it. So you want questions. So we had a couple people that stretched the truth answering questions, right? So don't do that. We didn't really know it till later. There's not a whole lot we can do about it at that point.
But that said, we have a very diverse array of judges from anywhere from engineering to business to healthcare to entrepreneurial backgrounds. So the combination of those 5-ish individuals will help mitigate that.
And what they did, the question was, do you have a patent? I think they had applied for a provisional patent, but the question was, do you have a patent? And he just said yes, instead of saying we've applied for a provisional. And that's a big difference, if you know that well. And so they kind of stretched it. It's part nerves. I don't know that it was intentional, to be real honest with you, but it was a little, it was not good for Michael and I, because we knew the truth, and we're sitting there 100 feet from the judges going, oh crap, what do we do? You know, if you don't know, the thing to say is, man, that's a great question. We hadn't thought about that yet. We'll get to work on that. Right? That's how you answer a question. You don't know the answer. The worst thing you can do. Or sometimes you do have a bit of an answer, is we have some early indication of this. Or some of the conversations we have may go this way, but we don't have a definitive answer to that. Nothing wrong with saying that. And the judges really like that, because they also like that you admit, I don't know that, right? But we're going to be working to find that out. So that's how you handle those questions. Make those questions a positive. We had one of the guys won second place a couple years ago with an idea that a lot of people thought he shouldn't have won. But he absolutely, his answer was so good, the judge was embarrassed he asked the question. I mean, this guy peppered him with the answer. The judge is like, okay, I surrender. So it was about his competition. There's already this company, man, he started rattling statistics on the company. He knew every detail about the competitor possible. The judge is like, okay, good job. So again, don't take questions as a challenge. That's a good place to submit where you're at. And usually we don't get any. We spend some time working with the judges, so they're not sitting there trying to tear you apart. Unless you just said something that's so glaringly, obviously wrong. They're not mean in any stretch of the imagination. They're curious. And that's what they're trying to get to, does this team deserve to win? So the questions are pretty good. So part of why we do the practice is that we'll have people there that will pepper you with questions. And gosh, last year, I think after that, the real judges asked every question that were asked that night.
I think so.
And all the teams were like, man, we're glad we came to that thing. You know, we were totally prepared for those questions. And because we got a couple of people that were there that, you know, man, they were asking 7 or 8 questions.
Well, and one of them was a finalist judge.
Yeah.
So.
So be prepared for that. Anything else? Typically have a handheld microphone again.
Yes,
So
we
we'll
have,
get to
yeah,
do
so,
this in the
traditional, what we'll do, you have a handheld microphone. There will be 2 up there if you need it, but, like Jeff said, it's usually behooves you just to have 1 speaker. You can hand it off if you want to, but, you all can make that determination. There's no rules on that, just make sure that it works. We will, let's see here, what's the best thing to say? So this is a very efficient process. So what we'll do is we will have, when we start, this goes for preliminaries but also finalists, we will start with 1 team already ready to go. As soon as they pitch and do their 5-minute Q&A, they will exit either the room or the stage. There will always be another team right behind them, we call on deck, ready to come in. So let's say on the finals, they're exiting the stage. The other team that's on deck will then be entering the stage, and that helps it make it a little bit more efficient. And then we also ask you to give us a couple sentences about what your team is all about. So as you all are walking on, our MC will announce, next up is team XYZ with their, square wheels, right?
Right.
So
Mars rocket launcher.
yeah. So we'll do that, and the finals will be about 6, maybe 8 finalists. It just really depends on how that all works out and how many teams we have this year. We typically go for about 6, though. And again, maximum of 7 minutes. If you don't take the entire 7 minutes, that's fine. That does not add anything to your all's Q&A. So it's a maximum of 7 minutes for your pitch, a maximum of 5 minutes for your question and answer session.
And we will cut you off.
Yeah, we will cut.
And then we'll cut the judges off as well.
Yeah.
The judges know.
Yeah. And we do that again for fairness. Everybody gets their max of 7 minutes and max of 5 minutes. So it will go quick. It will be a great experience. You sit down, you'll have this rush of endorphins of like, oh my gosh, we did this. It's crazy. Then we'll have a speaker, and then while the judges deliberate, then we'll come back and we'll announce the first, second, third. And we have several additional awards as well. So like for your trade show, for social, various other things. So we'll announce those too. So it's an opportunity for y'all to make extra, to win extra money. You do not, to get the additional awards, you don't have to place. The first place winner can take everything. The first place winner could only get they only get the first place. It just really depends. Anybody is eligible for the additional awards. Those are all $500 apiece. And then also, as our Rural Reimagined Grand Challenge, we have a $2,500 additional prize, and that is to the team that most potentially impacts a rural area. That will be determined by not our judges, but a group of people representing the university, and anybody can win that as well. So it may be that the first place winner gets it, third place winner, or dead last gets it. It doesn't matter. So everybody has an opportunity to win money regardless of your placement in the competition. So that's really exciting. I will reiterate what Jeff said. You're not getting any questions. They don't like you. The harder the questions that you're getting, that means
The better.
that they are really into you and they're really trying to poke holes and figure out what you're actually going to, how you're going to react to that. And I don't know if you said it or not, but I will say it again. If you don't know the answer, what is your answer? That's a great question. We're going to find out. Don't make something up, because that
We'll
happened
work
and
on that.
it cost them dearly. We'll work on that. That's a great point. Thank you for bringing that up.
So we try to, so one of the things that some people, I'll be real honest with you, some people have an issue with is once it starts, we leave it up to the judges. We don't interject,
We have no control over that.
because that's the worst thing we could do is
Yeah.
start affecting, because I'm going to know some of you better than others, and so we have nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely nothing. So Michael and I have to work really hard on that. Now, up until the time, if you want, before you turn in your presentation, what's the due date for the presentation?
Presentations, there's no due date.
Yeah, you'll just show up and you'll
But
have to
business
plug in
plan
your
is
next-
So if you want help,
Yeah.
if you want to come and pitch to us and show us your slides, and we can make suggestions on wording or whatever, we'll be happy to do
Yeah.
some stuff even individually to help with that.
We help everybody.
The more you help, the better, but if you don't come and get the help, one of the things we got one year is, well, nobody helped me. You have 23 emails saying,
Yeah.
click here to get
Yes.
help, right? I can only take you to the water. I can't pour it down your guzzle for you.
But
So,
for some
you
reason,
know.
people don't seem to want to ask for help. Please do. That's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of you want to compete better. So please do.
And sometimes it's not really help, it's just a different set of eyes
Yeah.
that aren't so
Yeah.
close to it.
Yep.
Can make your presentation so much better.
Yeah, because you can become very you get
Tunnel
blinders.
vision.
Yeah, tunnel vision when you're so close to something. I'll be frank with you. I sat back there and made a presentation tonight while Jeff was talking, and it took me a minute or two that I had to take a step back from what I did about 6 months ago and update that presentation, because you can become very close to it. You have to put yourself in the audience's shoes, and that's what I was doing. So I want to encourage you all to do that. We do have this recorded as always. I would encourage you, this didn't take too long, go back and take a look at it, but come to our pitch practice nights. That really gives you an opportunity to have really some professional people, a different set of eyes. It'll give you an opportunity to practice getting questions asked, because it's a whole different ball game than like you're
And I think
in a,
last year you
you know.
didn't do your slides, right? You did a actual just
Yeah,
stood
you
up
just-
and
you
did
just
your
did your
kind of
pitch.
presentation
Yeah.
from memory, and that actually worked out really well because everybody got to see.
And the one at the Biz Foundation.
Yeah, the one there, you just kind of stood up in the crowd and kind of did your pitch, and that worked out really well. It seemed to get a lot more interaction, and
It made people a lot
and
more
it showed
confident.
you whether you were ready or not.
Yeah.
That you could get up and talk for 3 to 5 minutes without having the slides. And so I think people really got a lot. They went, whoa, because a couple guys were like, wow, I'm way more prepared than I thought. And some were like, whoa,
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near being prepared.
Let's see here. What else? I was going to say something about the format. Yeah, so you'll just show up with your both preliminaries and the main competition. New for this year, we're going to give you an HDMI plug. So I would try and test that out on several systems before you get there. However, we will have ITS staff available to assist you, but have a backup copy on a thumb drive that you can throw on our backup computer. Our backup computer will be a Windows computer. Just FYI, with PowerPoint on it, so it would behoove you to have a PowerPoint or a PDF backup, because I learned the other night you can actually load up the PDF, put it on full screen, and the clicker, we will have this exact clicker. It will actually work the same as a PowerPoint, so that's pretty nice. I did not realize you could do that. So we will have ITS staff on hand. People will be taking time. If something happens in between there, we have contingency for that. We just want to make it very fair for everybody. Andrew, is there anything else that we would
Well,
want?
check your spelling and
Yeah,
check
check
your
your
numbers. We have that happen every year that at the last minute, it's like, oh, 2 of my numbers are wrong. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, you've looked at it 50 times. And again, tunnel vision,
Yep.
you didn't catch that you didn't know how to multiply 7 times 3.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah.
it's just that, that's, everybody does that. So just
Okay.
make sure other people check it.
Yeah.
Proofread it.
And proofread it, and another good way to do it, a final way too, is to start from the last slide and go every bullet point up in reverse. So you're not going through it, you know, that way that you have it basically in your memory. Look at it from a different way, have your roommates look at it, go find an English major, just anybody that can take a look at it, because inevitably there'll be something. I probably got a misspelling on mine too, but.
And make sure your talk matches the slides. That's
Yeah.
another. So
Oh, that's
we,
what I
we've
was gonna
seen
say.
people do some slides. It's like you're talking about something totally different than the slide that's up there.
On the finalist competition, we will have what's called a confidence monitor, so you'll be on the stage. You will not have to turn, you
Jeff
did
talked
mention,
about
okay.
that.
So reiterate, we will have that, that's very nice to have. Did you tell them about the people with the cards?
No, I told her we would cut them off. So yeah,
Yeah.
typically we'll have somebody. It's usually Tiffany that works for me. She's an ex-high school teacher, so she loves this stuff. So you know, at 2 minutes she's going to hold up a green
Green
card.
card, yeah,
At 1 minute,
yellow
a
card,
yellow card, and then red means stop.
yeah,
And so that means your time is up. And the MC
yes,
will also yell time.
yes, very loudly, so it's fun. But you all will be prepared. Also, last thing that I'll say, we will have a run-through of everything from final competition. We will have a mandatory run-through that at least one person from your team needs to attend. We'll announce that date and time later. Probably it'll be traditionally it's the Friday before.
April 16th
Yeah.
at 5 p.m. in Dairy Auditorium.
Yeah, and we will go through the entire thing. You can get up on stage, see what that feels like.
You get to see, believe it or not, when you're nervous and all these lights are on,
Mhm.
steps can be an issue.
Yep.
If you've ever
I fall
watched
up
any
that
live television, people fall up and down steps.
When you're on deck and about to go out there and your nerves inevitably will go up a little bit, do
That's
like
Friday
this,
the
don't lock your knees. So any nurses in the crowd know what I'm talking about if you don't. When you get nervous, you tend to stand like this and your knees are locked. That cuts off your blood flow and you can tend to pass out. Luckily, we've never had that. However, we have another program during the summer that actually does happen. So
We come close.
just do like that and take deep breaths and also remind yourself you're not going to die. This is going to be awesome. You've practiced well over 20 times. You know this. You'll have your confidence monitor, but you know what? Y'all are going to know this so much that you don't need the confidence monitor. You're going to do awesome. Everybody does every time. And if you get up there and you croak, that is okay. It happens. That's fine.
So if you make a mistake, take a deep breath and
Yeah.
roll on. All right? You know, again, you don't think musicians that you paid $150 to go to a concert, they make mistakes every night.
Mhm.
But the good ones recover from it, and the audience may never know. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's okay. But the greatest musicians in the world occasionally play the wrong note.
Yeah.
And so just don't worry about that. Again, there's very little gunplay at this thing. So
You know, and another thing I think too is a lot of times, like if you're not exactly saying like what you rehearsed, nobody knows that. They don't, because this is the first time that they've heard your pitch. So you may know that you messed up, but it does not matter to anybody else unless you call attention to it. Now, if you croak and it's more than 5 seconds or whatever, you know, maybe make a joke out of it or whatever. But it's really this is going to be fine. It's not high stress. It's a great opportunity for you all to learn public speaking. The only way to do public speaking.
a little
is
humor
experience.
sometimes works really well according to what your subject is.
It does.
I've seen that do really well. The Gigamunch guys came out and, you know, the 2-foot hole, what do you call the chef caps? They have
Yeah, like the Chef Boyardee,
Yeah.
Chef
And gave out
Cats.
chocolate chip cookies to the judges. So, I mean, you know, they really did a lot of humor and things like that. So they did really well with that.
No props on stage. We have that come up every once in a while. You can't bring a chair out there. You want to have your prototype or whatever if it's essential that you want to show it. That's fine, but nothing that would be like large or obstructive.
Oh, I know. The rest of the team. So typically what we
Right,
say
yes.
is one presenter. Then you have the other, let's say there's 4 of you. And so some are going to be experts in things that you're not. And so typically what we say, the best way to do this, if you do the presentation and those 3 are on your team, they're standing at the edge of the stage And as you finish and we start the Q&A, you have the other three walk out, because then they can help answer questions that you may not know. Right?
So
If the
you don't know
judge
what
does
those
pop
questions are gonna
something
be.
up that she doesn't know, then all of you can answer the questions. That's perfectly fine.
Yep.
And we've seen that happen a lot, that we got a pretty technical question.
Mhm.
You know, the nurse is going, I don't know, would you, so their team member answered it, and it works great.
5 minutes goes fast, so brevity is key in your answers. So think of all the things that you may be asked, and think about how you can answer that in the least amount of words with the most impact. That's something I struggle with. So I tend to be talky, and people,
Me, it's
and especially you're on stage and you've got your nerves and all that. Just think about how you can get prepared for that. So
And so we usually, so the biggest problem we've had there is judges rambling on.
yes,
So we usually insert one of the judges that's like the den mothers, like keep them moving along. Don't let one judge start asking a series of questions and take up your whole 5 minutes. If that's not good. So we do work on that. But it could happen.
if that does happen, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to hurt you. That's just less questions that they've been able to ask us. What happens is, so when they get done, when everybody gets done, we get all the judges, we take them to a private room, we sit them down, and then they talk. They talk through it. They'll look at the notes that they made. They have a printout of the rubric for everybody. They'll score you. They'll write notes and things like that. But then they sit down and they have a qualitative discussion about what this really means, who would be viable in the real world. And Jeff and I basically just moderate it. We listen to what they have to say. We will provide you with that feedback if you want it. So you can kind of learn, especially if you want to do Eagle Works next year, you can kind of learn how you can improve. So it's a really great experience. And
The judges usually ask Michael and I tons of questions because we know your stuff by that time, and we're like, we can't answer that. You have to judge them based on what you just saw.
what you heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. The only interaction that we have is really just reminding them we've got about
Making sure they got the right teams and
you
they
got
get
the right
finished,
team,
yes.
and we don't have a Steve Harvey situation, and that
We've
that works.
had a lot of ties. Our first really big year, we were late getting everything turned in because we had 2 ties in the top 3.
But
They
we
were
can't-
literally a half a point apart.
yeah, so we can't have
That took some pretty long discussions. We had to gather judges back up.
Yeah.
All kinds of things.
But we just really, I think the main message is we've gotten back. We enforce a lot of these rules for fairness, and the judges you're really going to enjoy the entire experience. You're going to enjoy interacting with the judges. Anything else?